We've been taking pictures of our planet from space for decades, and they're stunning, right? But also, there are just so many of them. Here's the thing, though. What if I told you that just looking at all those pictures isn't the same as actually seeing what's going on? Let's dive in. I mean, think about it. Ever since the 70s, we've been snapping photos from above. And now we have whole fleets of satellites beaming down petabytes of data every single day. It's a fire hose of information. So the problem isn't getting the pictures anymore. The real challenge, the huge challenge, is figuring out what all those images actually mean. And that right there, that's the big paradox we're up against today. It's kind of like we're drowning in a sea of data, but at the same time, we're dying of thirst for actual knowledge. So on one side, you've got this absolute flood of images, right? More than any human could ever possibly look through. But on the other side, there's a serious drought. A drought of what scientists call ground truth. And what is that? Well, it's the real deal on-the-ground info you need to tell an AI, hey, that pixel right there, that's a cornfield, or that's a brand new building. And getting that kind of data, it's super, super expensive and hard to come by. This whole problem has a name: sparse labels. It is the fundamental challenge in mapping our world today. Just imagine trying to teach a computer to recognize every single crop grown in, say, North America. But you only have a handful of labeled examples from a few farms in Iowa. How's it supposed to figure out the rest? That's the sparse label problem, and it has been a massive roadblock for years. Okay, so what's the solution? Well, what if you didn't need a million perfect labels? What if you could build an AI that was smart enough to learn the basic language of the Earth just by looking at all the different kinds of data we're already collecting? Well, that's exactly the big idea behind a brand new model from the folks at Google DeepMind. It's called AlphaEarth Foundations, or AEF for short. And believe me, it's a totally different way of thinking about this whole sparse data problem. The best way to think about AEF is like a universal translator for our planet. See, normally you'd have to train one AI model just for crops, another one for forests, another for water. You get the idea. But AEF is different. It learns one single unified language for everything. It does this by mashing together all sorts of data. Not just regular satellite pics, but radar images that can see through clouds, climate data, even text from Wikipedia pages about certain places. So it's not just learning what a place looks like, it's learning the whole context of what's there. Okay, so that sounds pretty amazing, right? But how does it actually pull it off? What's the secret sauce here? Let's dig into what really makes this model tick. All right, one of the biggest breakthroughs is how AIF sees time. Most older models, they just see the world as a series of separate snapshots. Click, a picture in May. Click, another picture in August. They're disconnected. But AIF, it sees the world like a continuous movie. It understands the rhythm of the seasons, the flow of change over time. And because of that, it can intelligently guess what's happening in between satellite pictures, even filling in the blanks when a spot is covered by clouds for months on end. That's a game changer. So, if we break it down, the whole method is basically 3 key steps. First, like we said, it pulls together all that different data: optical, radar, the works. Second, it gets that whole continuous flow of time thing. And then, here's the really cool part. It takes all of that incredibly complex information and boils it down into a tiny, super powerful digital fingerprint for every little 10 by 10 meter patch of our planet. Just 64 bytes, but it holds so much information. Okay, so that's the theory. Sounds pretty slick, right? But the big question is always, does it actually work? Well, the researchers put it to the test. They pitted AFE against all the best current mapping methods in a bunch of real-world scenarios where, you guessed it, they didn't have a lot of data to work with. And the results? Well, they were pretty jaw-dropping. Across 15 different tests, AFF consistently came out on top. It wasn't just a little bit better on one or two things. No, it outperformed every other method across the board. We're talking about a major, major leap forward here. And we're not talking about a small bump in performance. On average, AEF slashed the error rate by nearly 24% compared to the next best thing. In the world of AI modeling, a 24% improvement is huge. That's a massive jump in accuracy. But, numbers are one thing. Let's look at what this actually means visually. Here we've got a crop map from Canada. On the left, you've got the map made by AlphaEarth. And on the right, the map from the next best model. The difference is just night and day, isn't it? Look how crisp and clear the field boundaries are with AEF. It's just so much more precise.
And check this out, because this is where it gets really wild. This next map shows something called evapotranspiration. That's basically just a fancy word for how much water is evaporating off the land and coming out of plants. It's something you can't see in a regular satellite photo. It's invisible. And yet, look, AEF maps hit out with amazing accuracy. The other models, they could barely make sense of it. So look, this is way more than just some cool science project. A breakthrough like this, it has huge, real-world consequences for how we understand and manage our entire planet. We are seriously talking about a brand new era for mapping. And honestly, maybe the most exciting part of this whole story is this. Google is releasing these powerful digital fingerprints to the public for the entire planet from 2017 to 2024. They're just out there for anyone to use. It's like handing the world a brand new, much smarter pair of glasses to look at itself.
So who's going to use this? Well, pretty much everyone who studies the Earth. You've got climate scientists building way better models, conservationists tracking deforestation almost in real time, policymakers trying to figure out food and water security, even disaster response teams who can now spin up super accurate maps of floods and wildfires as they're happening. The list just goes on. You know, the researchers who built this really said it best. They've created a tool that lets us take those few precious bits of ground truth data we have and stretch them accurately across the whole globe. It basically gives the entire scientific community a massive power-up, letting them create better, faster maps than ever before. And that leaves us with one last really big question. For the very first time, we can create a living, breathing, constantly updating map of our world. We can see our planet for what it is, not a static picture, but a dynamic, changing system. So the question isn't, can we see it anymore? The question is, now that we can see it with this incredible new clarity, what are we going to do about it?